Welcome back. We'll forget the fiscal cliff in the US. We've got our own cliff, according to business leader Michael Cheney, West Australian business leader, claimed today we're on the edge of a growth cliff because of that mining boom ending. Tony Abbott bought into it. Lots of things happening today. To comment on them, the good senator from Western Australia, Shadow Assistant Treasurer, Cormann, speaking to me from Perth. Welcome back to the show.
Good to be back.
And I want to thank you very much. You are between engagement. You've given up the Prince of Belgium to come on here and talk to us quickly.
Well, the Belgian Crown Prince is over in Australia for a trade mission, and he starts, of course, in the greatest state of them all, the great state of Western Australia.
What do the Belgians, out of interest, seeing as you have a Belgian connection, don't you?
Well, I was born and bred in Belgium, and of course I migrated to Australia back in 1994. But I was surprised to realize in a briefing over lunch today the extent of the trade relationship between Belgium and Australia. There is a lot of the port infrastructure around Australia is built by companies from Belgium, like a lot of the dredging activity and a lot of the infrastructure work has got some Belgian business involvement in it.
There you go. I wouldn't have picked that. And you answered another question, because another story today, your counterpart in WA, Julie Bishop, has been banging the drum about what the Prime Minister was up to 17 years ago in her previous life as a lawyer. And Tony Abbott said today it's fair for the government to question what Julie Bishop did 17 years ago as a lawyer. I was going to ask you what you were doing 17 years ago. Any skeletons in your closet? You were in Belgium.
Well, about 18 years ago, I came on a holiday to Australia, and I thought, what a fantastic place this is, with great opportunities, and I decided to stay.
Well, assume you weren't escaping anything. You can't do anything wrong in Belgium, I think.
Well, I came here pretty well straight after university, and of course, unlike the Prime Minister, Julie Bishop has been very happy to answer any questions that were put to her. And if the Prime Minister doesn't have anything to hide, and if she's so confident that she didn't do anything wrong, it is a fair question to ask why she's not prepared to answer some very reasonable and legitimate questions that have been put to her.
Well, now that we've got your background and we've given the Belgians a plug, I must say I didn't realise how important they were, but that's good. I'm going to go to the issue today, again over in Perth, the great state of Western Australia. Michael Cheney is one of your business leaders. He warned today of a growth cliff that Australia's facing. It's all about this, the commodities boom slowing. Without talking about the mining tax, I just wanted to talk in general, because there's been opinions being divided in the political and business worlds between saying, look, yes, the commodities boom might have ended, but it's only going to slow, it's not going to go bust. What do you make of Michael Cheney's comments in the context of the current...
Well, we certainly agree with him that the current government is taking Australia in the wrong direction when it comes to our economic prosperity opportunities into the future. The cost of doing business in Australia is going up. Our productivity growth and our international competitiveness are going down at a time when we should be doing everything we can to be the most productive, the most competitive internationally than we possibly can be. The current government is adding new taxes, adding significant new red tape, adding sovereign risk, and of course slowing down our productivity growth and consequently our international competitiveness. So in a general sense, we agree with the point that he's making, that the government has probably taken the strength of the resources sector here in Australia somewhat for granted. They've taken the view that no amount of new tax and new red tape is going to slow it down. But of course, it is slowing things down, and this is a time when we actually need to pursue policies that make us more competitive, not less.
Would you agree, as many business people do, that the companies themselves also have to accept some responsibility? Productivity isn't always about government. It's a management issue as well as unions, as well as everyone, isn't it?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, the economic success of Australia as a nation depends on the economic success of individual businesses and individual Australians. I mean, the government doesn't create success, doesn't create jobs as such, but the government has got to set the framework and the conditions for our businesses and our people across Australia to be able to prosper and be successful. And we think that in that context, the current government has essentially put way too much additional lead into our saddlebag at a time when we could afford it least.
Well, there was one productivity report came out last week, at least one major one, that's been saying actually things aren't that bad. Now, Tony Abbott, of course, joined the Michael Cheney bandwagon today, saying it was. Where do you, given that, you know, Perth, Western Australia is a high-cost place because of the mining boom. I mean, it's the catch-22, isn't it? If you have a mining boom, wages go up. There are lots of other issues, aren't there?
Well, I mean, things aren't that bad if you compare us to some other parts of the world across Europe and the US. But our economic performance today is really the result of decisions that have been made in the past. What we're concerned about is that some of the decisions that have been made over the last 4 or 5 years are putting us on the wrong trajectory. Looking ahead, there are many very exciting challenges for Australia by virtue of the fact that we are, right in the middle of the fastest growing region in the world. The Asia-Pacific will generate most of the economic growth in the world over the next few decades. But we are not in the best possible position to take advantage of that on the back of more new taxes, more red tape, increased sovereign risk because of the unpredictability of the government decision-making. And we think that there is a better way, that governments which spend less can tax less, which are serious about reducing red tape, which are serious about addressing emerging problems of union militancy, can actually help drive increased productivity growth.
Before I move on to the general economic, I wasn't going to mention the MRRT, the mining tax, but I thought you'd be very excited.
Neither have
I thought you'd be very excited today to hear Penny Wong say she's going to give monthly updates of the revenue. So every month you'll be able to look and whack them about the mining tax.
Well, I mean, this was in fact the promise that Julia Gillard made to then Greens leader Bob Brown back in March when the mining tax was debated in the Senate. I mean, she said then, because I mean, there has of course been widespread concern about how much revenue the mining tax will in fact rise. We have serious doubts as to whether it will rise, but the government has said it will rise, even in the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook. And back in March, the Prime Minister promised that she would provide monthly updates.
Well,
We're now
you're
4
going to
or
get
5
them
months
from
into
next
it.
month. You'll be able to pour over them. It'll be very exciting.
We'll see.
I'll be looking at them closely too. But what I was going to say is Tony Abbott today was talking about productivity, which I was going to say was a bit of a motherhood statement, given that he was talking about childcare today. Seems to be the new positive, kind of gentler Tony Abbott. Are you taking that approach too? The let's be positive, not too negative, because it might affect our polling?
Well, we've always said that we've got two jobs. Our two main responsibilities are to keep this bad government to account, to scrutinise the activities of this government and to present a positive alternative agenda for Australia. And of course, the announcement today in relation to childcare is part of our productivity agenda, because an important part of increasing productivity growth is to increase workforce participation. And that is, of course, very much at the heart of our productivity agenda.
And doesn't hurt to win over a few female votes too, does it?
Well, at the end of the day, increased workforce participation has been a focus of ours for some time. That is why Tony Abbott is pursuing his paid parental leave policy, which is much superior to the policy that's been put forward by the current government, and that is why we have made the announcement that we've made today in relation to childcare. OK, a couple of other issues wearing your hat as Shadow Assistant Treasurer. A lot of interest today in Qantas, speculation in one newspaper that the sharks are circling again. I think they've always been circling as the share price dropped. Obviously, Qantas is in a unique position. It has some legislative protection from foreign ownership and other things. Just in a general sense, do you have any view on wanting to see that kind of private equity or a small group take over Qantas again? Look, I mean, I'm not an economic commentator. I'm a member of Parliament, and so I really leave the decision-making on what is in the best interest of Qantas to the Qantas executive team and their shareholders to resolve. I mean, obviously, to the extent and if there are going to be some issues around legislation, we'll deal with those issues if and when they arise. But in a general sense, I mean, ultimately, these are judgments for Qantas management to make, as they see fit in the interest of the Qantas company.
A good capitalist free market answer there. So I'm sure you probably will give a similar answer to speculation today that your hometown, one of your hometown newspapers, the Perth Sunday Times, might be up for sale by News Limited. And this might get into a media issue, given that is right in your backyard. Do you have any views on that, who you'd like to see own it if it were put up for sale?
Well, I'm sitting here right in the middle of the Sunday Times, and
Well, there you go.
I mean,
what
the decisions.
better place to give your view on it then?
Well, I mean, I have got no responsibility and no view whatsoever on, what should or shouldn't happen on that front. I mean, again, if there are issues around relevant laws that come into play, we'll make those judgments even when those issues arise. But as a matter of general principle, obviously, any private company, any publicly listed company is open for investment, is open for takeover, is open for sale, and as long as relevant businesses comply with all of the laws of the land, good luck to them.
But as a politician who I would call you media friendly, I'm sure you want to see as many outlets. We don't want any more newspapers to close, disappear, or in the media policy review this week, anything that doesn't keep an open media, right?
I think that the free press and freedom of speech are very important values and principles in a democratic system like ours, and I hope that moving forward that freedom of the press and freedom of speech will continue to be preserved and protected from whatever plans this current government might have.
There you go, and for once we end in total agreement. Thank you very much, Senator Cormann, and enjoy your trip back to the Prince of Belgium tonight.
And I'll be back.
You will. Thank you very much. That's all for tonight, but we'll be back again to do it all again tomorrow night. I hope you can join me then.